everyone. Pleasure is mine. It's true that this is my first Asia Real Estate Forum, and I hope I would be able to give you some great insights, different but important. And my presentation in the themes of the Filipino is worth building for, as long as we build green. And I think very timely in terms of the recent, COP conference on climate change. But before I start with that, I wanted to show you guys this slide where everyone is probably wondering how we're going to do after this pandemic is over. And I think a lot of the companies are very dependent in terms of the strategies that they will adopt relative to the next normal. And you can see that there will be different approaches here, from progressive, moderate, and conservative. I think this is with regards to how work from home is going to be followed by companies, whether you're a Fortune 500 or a local company. It's not a one size fits all. You'd have to figure out what is going to be good for you and what both your employees and management will adopt. Just some examples how we've moved, from the traditional workspace to the new workplace. And I think how we're going to look like the post-COVID workplace beyond 2021 would be a combination. Some companies would adopt work from home and others would not. I think, as I've mentioned before, whether you're a big financial institution or a back office or an ad agency, it's not going to be a one size fits all, and everyone has to decide in terms of what direction they're going to take. And this is pretty much very occupier driven. And I think why I started with this is the bigger concern is really the built environment, which is the buildings in itself. This one is what's inside. And so the next themes would be, the building. The big themes of the recent climate change conference, our head for global sustainability and energy service and ESG, Guy Granger, actually participated there. And he really focused on talking about the built environment and making it more sustainable. And this is really the core themes that I'd like to mention and focus on, because I think as we look at the next decade of Philippine commercial real estate, we're really talking about constructing, more buildings, whether it's residential, whether it's office. And then we also talk about the themes of infrastructure, more roads, more highways, more airports. These are all going to contribute to our carbon footprint. That's why I think this is something that we at JLL like to emphasize. So the good news is JLL is actually very active in this space. The World Economic Forum worked with us, and we actually produced a report last October 2021. It's out. It's called the Green Building Principles. This is an action plan for net zero carbon buildings. And, this outlines 10 key principles, as you've seen in the slide. It talks about calculating a robust carbon footprint of your portfolio, setting a target every year, measuring it, and recording your embodied carbon, how you're going to reduce that embodied carbon, energy optimization, how you're going to increase your use of renewable energy supply, maximizing renewable energy procurement, reducing emissions in your value chain, carbon offsetting, and equitable cost benefit sharing. Why is this important? I think, over the past 20 years in this industry, I've never really bothered to talk about, sustainability, the buildings, what it's made of, and actually what it consumes. Now, moving forward, I think the next 10 years for Philippine real estate, specifically in every aspect of commercial, industrial, and residential, it's no longer having a certification of LEED or Verde. It would also draw on the themes of what energy this building consumes, what kind of public transport does it support, And this is really going to be an exciting future for commercial real estate relative to how we're gonna adopt the planning for net zero carbon buildings. So just really covering some themes, the 5 key areas in the report. And as I've said, this report I will make available for everyone, just reach out. So the first one is really adopting a data-driven approach. This is really one of the steps, knowing exactly what you need to address. And I think one of the key areas that I mentioned is how technology is going to capture this data in buildings, which again is a very exciting topic to discuss. Number 2, setting goals along the journey. As you know, the challenge we're facing is enormous. Really, the 2030 date and the 2050 dates are all out there. We need to revisit if we're really going to make 2030 happen for the company, or is it going to be 2050? So that, I think, is strategic, and that would be a discussion per company. Tackling embodied carbon, businesses need to maximize emission reductions. I think this is, how you construct the building, how you occupy it, and as I mentioned earlier, the energy that it consumes. And again, these are very broad themes and longer topics to discuss. Focusing on clean energy. I think it's very exciting for the Philippines that what you've probably seen during the pandemic is the construction of more solar farms, geothermal power plants. And as you probably saw during the pandemic, companies like Aboitiz Power and AC Energy, they have been really investing in a lot of solar plants, not only solar farms, not only in the Philippines, but also acquiring in places like Vietnam and Australia to support, the development of clean energy for our future. Collaborating widely, I think this is also a great theme to talk about. It's not only us corporate real estate professionals, but also, energy professionals together with the builders and government agencies to help build policies. So what does it mean to formally adopt these principles? This means that companies should be pledging to implement these principles with any existing net zero carbon commitments on all their real estate assets. These principles and action plan will offer a path for delivery on your ambition to reach your targets. And this is going to be adopted by all companies globally. As emphasized through this action plan, urgency is critical. The 5 ways cities must follow in terms of these steps is to prioritize decarbonizing buildings and climate action plans. Again, another report that we have is JLL's Responsible Real Estate Survey. We would be happy to share this with you. Just reach out. Lean into partnerships, both the private sector and the public sector. I think companies like JLL has a lot to offer because of its global footprint and experience. We feel that existing buildings, the old ones, will be retrofitted instead of knocking it down and building new buildings. Again, another strategy that probably cities will adopt moving forward. Knowledge sharing, and there's a lot of knowledge out there. A lot of companies are offering these knowledge like IFC, World Bank, and the UN. And companies like JLL also will be working with a lot of our city governments to try and drive their sustainability strategies. And then last is the leverage on technology to progress decarbonization. JLL, through its JLL Technologies companies, will actually work with landlords to offer new technologies that measure carbon footprint and emissions, and also energy savings. So this is another report that I'm going to be sharing, the decarbonization of the built environment. 5 key themes. This decade is being seen as a tipping point in decarbonizing real estate. Number 2, companies are outpacing policymakers in their ambitions. Number 3, climate risk is now accepted as a financial risk. Number 4, retrofitting buildings is critical to meeting carbon reduction targets. And number 5, data is the single biggest catalyst for green progress. So as a parting shot, again, city governments will need to employ a wide armory of tools to decarbonize the built environment. Again, I emphasize our role working with the city mayors and governors to actually also drive legislation from an LGU level, not just on a national level. And this will require, teamwork. So JLL is out there to support, our local governments in driving sustainability to bridge the gap between intent and action. Thank you.